Hi and welcome again to another episode of NLP Upskill Your Life. It's great to be back again with you, Finton, doing another podcast.
Well, Mark, how are you? Yeah, it's great to be back. And I'm hoping now that we'll have lots of high value content for our listeners this week.
Yeah, as always. And how's the weekend been? Has it been okay? Busy?
Yeah, busy enough now, I have to say. It's up and down to Dublin and that. So,
Mm.
yeah, oh, it never stops.
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of really good to have this kind of training to know how to deal with any anxious situations that we have, really, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And in fairness, we've all been through situations where we have been anxious, and there are times when we can feel a bit anxious, even now. So
Yeah.
knowing how to deal with that anxiety is
Mm.
something that's well, noticing it and dealing with it is something that's important to me in my everyday life, and
Mm.
I'm sure it is to you too, Mark.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. Well, like it's life. So life kind of throws different obstacles up from time to time. So it's good to have mechanisms like we're going to show people tonight on the podcast how to deal with that.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So basically, like there's a positive getting into the content here. There's a positive there's positive fear to keep you alive. So we all need to have a certain amount, like we say, of fear in life, normal fear, and then there is fear that can hinder us really, to kind of like we were saying, can make us catastrophize and kind of really kind of you know cause us more harm than good really, if that makes sense. So
Absolutely.
then the three types of ways anxiety can affect us. There's three main things. The first thing is fight, and the second thing is flight, and the third thing is freeze, which I'm going to explain to you. And sometimes it helps us, and other times, like I say, it can hinder us. And the amygdala overrides the prefrontal cortex. So yeah, how does that make sense, Finton? Yeah.
It certainly does, yeah. And as you say there, but the amygdala is our reptilian brain. It's based on pure reaction. It's purely reactionary, whereas the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain which is our human brain, if you like, which does our thinking for us. And what happens is when we've the amygdala engaged, then our prefrontal cortex switches off completely because there's absolutely no need for us to think in that situation. It runs a pattern. And this is exactly what's happening here is the amygdala just runs the same pattern. It has a pattern for dealing with anxiety and it runs the same one. The problem is that for some people, they have a pattern which serves them, and for other people, they have a pattern which doesn't serve them. And I suppose tonight's podcast being about anxiety, it's as much about anxiety that doesn't serve you, debilitating anxiety,
Mhm.
rather than anxiety that is good for you. So what we're going to do is cover first, I suppose, um, how those fight, flight, and freeze can be beneficial to you, why we have them, why they've evolved, not just in us, because after all, it's our reptilian brain, so
Yeah.
it's in all animals basically, and obviously very important survival mechanism. So the first one, of course, is fight. So if you're in a situation where, say, for example, you're at home alone and you hear a noise, it might be an intruder ready to attack you. So of course you will just go into straight into fight mode, ready to defend yourself. And what we can find in that situation is that that's a good thing, really, because if someone is going to attack you, you want to be in a position where you're ready to fight. And the thing about it as well is you don't think about it, you just go straight into that mode. And you'd be surprised quite often a person in a fight who's forced into a situation like that will actually have much more strength than they ever realized.
Yeah. That's a great point, Finton, because some people are very nervous of fighting. Some people would be scared, really scared of confrontation. And I suppose a good way to think about it is like you only fight if you have to. So if you're in a corner, like you say, you need to defend yourself. But a good way to think about this is where the flight thing can come in as well, where you have the option to run. If you can run, run, because by fighting, it can turn out bad, nasty for you and for everybody involved. So that's one good thing to remember. To have the sense. To if it doesn't feel right, it's normally wrong. So you need to fight in that scenario. And yeah, another example of that, like about the fly, talking about the fly scenario,
Hmm.
it's about avoiding a situation. Whether, again, if you're in school, you're a school child, and you're kind of on the way home, and you've been bullied before, by going a certain route, and the bullies hang around this area. It's a flight mechanism where it gets you to avoid it, and go in enough different way, a different route. And as well as that, like where I live in the suburbs of Dublin, and normally when I'm going up the canal, it's much easier to get home from work, when you're cycling up the canal, because it's quicker. But
Yeah.
me, as long as with different other people as well, they go around the long way just to avoid. And as you avoid them, you're avoiding the messes on the canal, and as you avoid them, you're keeping away from them. So it's a safer route home, even though it's longer. It keeps you safer. So that's one example of the flight scenario. Well, two examples really.
Yeah. And actually, I can think of an example myself from when I was younger, of when I was down the Beltucht, and
Yeah.
myself and a friend of mine, we were playing hurling outside the house where we were staying. And he hit the ball and gave it a good long puck into the field next door. So anyway, I said, right, went into the field to get the ball back. And as I was there, he said, oh, sure, hang on there, and I'll see if I can hit the ball further, see how far I can hit it. And with that, all I could hear behind me were footsteps. But the footsteps seemed quite heavy and quite fast. And I looked behind, and of course, who was trotting up behind me? Only a bull. So I didn't think to stop and fight the bull for some reason. In fact, I didn't stop and think at all. I just ran. And I ran for the ditch where I climbed over to get the ball. And I have to say, all I remember is I just jumped. And I don't know how I managed to get over that ditch in one jump, but I did. All I remember is one of the girls shouting my name, shouting, Fitton, there's a bull behind you. As I was clearing the ditch, I was way ahead of her. But I landed on the other side, and not a bother on me at all. So it took me an awful lot longer to climb over the ditch to get into the field than I did to get out of it.
Yeah, that's scary. Oh my God.
It certainly is. Yeah,
I
yeah.
say you probably still get flashbacks from that sometimes.
Yeah, well, actually, it's funny because I wasn't scared. I didn't have enough time to be scared, to be honest with
All
you.
right, gotcha. Yeah, yeah,
I just got this pump of adrenaline and I just ran. And actually, of course, because I survived and there was no and I didn't injure myself or anything like that, it was kind of just a bit more of excitement and stuff like that. And the
yeah.
fact that afterwards I was able to say, okay, that's fine. I'm okay. The ball is in his field. I'm in mine. I'm in the garden and I'm happy with that. So,
Yes, yeah.
yeah, no, it's strange how, and like everything happened just like that. There was no thinking involved whatsoever. The prefrontal cortex could have sat there and went, well, now the bull is coming at a speed of, I can run at a speed of, I can
Yeah,
jump this high. All
yeah,
that, by which time the bull would have assisted me over the ditch.
yeah.
But
Oh, Jenny, yeah. But no,
thankfully,
that's a great example there, Finton. Yeah, yeah, because it's actually funny. Your adrenaline can really just say, for instance, if you're in a fight. I remember a friend of mine years ago was
yeah,
saying that he was in a conflict, a fight with somebody when he's young, a teenager, whatever it was, and he got like got a seriously bad kick, and he went on and he actually got a better of this dude that started him, this guy that started him,
yeah,
and he was walking away after the fight, wherever it was, and he had to drop down because the pain just came to him afterwards because he didn't realize at the time because he was full of adrenaline,
right,
and
yeah, yeah,
like it was just only afterwards it actually affected him. It was I always remember it just by you tell me the bull story because your adrenaline it doesn't affect you as the pain until afterwards, you know?
Absolutely. And like it is really a survival mechanism.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, so again, fight and flight,
Mm.
both good examples of times when, and it was only right that I suppose that the amygdala overtook the prefrontal cortex in those
Yeah,
cases,
definitely,
because
yeah.
by the time you think about it, you'd never do these things. You wouldn't get out of them.
Hmm.
And of course, then the third one then is freeze. And freeze, of course, can help us when we sense a danger, right? And I suppose we feel that we don't have a situation we're not in a position to fight. And we're also not really in a position to run away because we feel that maybe that the danger, whether it's another person or whatever the case might be, hasn't sensed that or isn't aware of the fact that we're there. So if we keep perfectly still, maybe like a child hiding in a wardrobe or under the bed or something like that, keep perfectly still, don't make a sound, then what will happen is they'll just go their own way and they'll leave us alone.
Mm.
Um, like for example, you often will see a deer freeze in the headlights,
Hmm. Yeah.
or a rabbit freezing when they see. And again, of course, the thing about it is that often in their natural environment, a deer will blend into its background as it will a rabbit. So if the deer is in the woods and it freezes, doesn't move at all, it's much harder to pick up, especially for its predators, maybe wolves or whatever. They may not even be aware of the fact of where it is or that it is there. And that's why it's quite a useful thing to freeze. I think you were telling me a story there a while back about a time when you froze, um, when you were under attack from some wasps or some bees or something. What was it again?
Oh yeah, it was actually funny when I was a kid. I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
I remember that like I was only a kid, and as I was walking across the road, a wasp flew by me, and I was terrified as a kid of wasps. I don't know. I'll have to see what actually caused the root cause. What because if you go back further than that, you probably find something like we talked to before, but that'd be another day's podcast. But what happened was when as I was crossing the road, a wasp came over to me, and I was like in the middle of a road, like it was actually dangerous, and I just froze like that. So the thing went away from me, and people were laughing at me. I was like, "Mark, are you mad? Freezing? You're gonna get killed." But that was a mechanism that made me freeze, and it shouldn't have been. It was catastrophizing really the being frozen that time because it could have been a hell of a lot worse, you know.
Yeah, well, the thing about it is that, look, again, what was happening was your protective systems, your amygdala was kicking in and it was
Yeah,
reacting in a way that it felt that if you freeze, and lots of people do this, I see
yeah,
it at work all the time. If a wasp or a bee comes in the window during the summer, there are
yeah.
people who will just freeze and they
Hmm.
just until the wasp goes away. And they know, well, they feel that if I'm not a threat to the wasp, then the wasp will leave me alone, or the bee, or whatever it might happen to be. And
Yeah,
there is a certain amount of truth in that because bees, for example, will only sting you if they feel under threat. And actually, same with wasps because bees
hmm,
will die in the process of stinging you.
yeah,
So you cannot be any less of a threat to a bee or a
yeah.
wasp if you're actually stood stock still. So again, it's a way for your body to protect you. So
Mm.
that's three great examples, I think, of fight, flight, and freeze
Yeah.
for where it's used in a positive way.
Hmm. Definitely, yeah. And I suppose as well, anxiety, it's really a feeling of worry and unease, and it's a worry about something that's coming up. It's not so much stuff from the back from before. It's really stuff that's coming up, or stuff that's happening right now can be sometimes anxiety as well. So it's mostly in front of you, like something that's uncertain, an uncertain outcome, really. Uh,
Yeah, quite often can, yeah. And in
mm,
fact, actually, that brings us back to basically to fight, flight, and freeze again, but then now in a situation where rather than being a positive, rather than something that can save your life, it's
yeah,
something that can well, at best hinder us, but it can actually wreck your life. It can, cause, bad situations for you. For example, we covered fight there earlier, where it was a positive thing you mentioned about your friend. But then there are times when people feel anxious, and what they do is, say, for example, someone maybe might be going for an interview or something like that, right?
Yeah,
What happens is they feel anxious about it, and and they start taking it out on people around them. They start feeling angry at the slightest thing, And of course, the person around them has done nothing wrong. They've just done whatever they normally do. But the person's anxiety causes them to fight
mm,
just with them, just to try and do something about the anxiety that they're feeling, to try and protect them from it. But of course, it's doing it in an inappropriate way. And
yeah,
they can end up fighting with their partner or fighting with the kids or wherever the case might be.
yeah,
And of course, as I say, it's not the kids' fault, it's not the partner's fault. They're just doing whatever they normally do. It's just the person's anxiety has hijacked them.
hmm
And what is supposed to be a positive thing in protecting them ends up in a situation where you know they it can actually wreck a relationship, especially if it happens consistently, you know um can you think of a such scenario where, for example, flight uh might come
yeah.
in?
Well, there was a scenario before, where you know if something went wrong, like just say for instance, I was out doing music and DJing, and as I was doing the gig, something went wrong with the equipment, and as it went wrong with the equipment, the crowd weren't too happy. They were, they were saying, "Shoot the DJ!" But once I got it back up on track, it's hard. You can start catastrophizing what's happened, and it can wreck the night for you. So that's what happened to me. Even though I got everything right, but it was at unease. There was a lot of unease after that because of what happened.
Yeah,
And even though it was the night seemed to be okay, but and like worked out well in the end. But it can if you let it, it could really because one thing went wrong, it can kind of wreck the whole event, so to speak.
yeah, that's very true, very
Yeah,
true. And so I suppose the thing about that's catastrophization, and it is easy for us to start thinking, oh, one thing has gone wrong, and next thing something else go wrong, or what if this happens? What if that
yeah,
happens?
exactly.
And yeah, and like the thing about it as well is that it can just completely play havoc in your mind,
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I suppose in a scenario, you were telling me about a story where you were DJing at a wedding.
Oh yeah,
And
that's right. I was, and yeah, I was DJing at a wedding, and there was the lady came up and said, "Will you play this kind of music?" She says, "Oh,
yeah,
okay." Then her father came up and said, "Will you play some different music?" Okay, well, no problem. He came up again and he said, "If I have to come up again, I won't be asking you." So he was threatening me,
yeah, yeah, of
and that made me feel uneasy because I was only doing the party what they want me to do. So I
course,
said
yeah.
to the bouncer afterwards that, look, I need to get out of here straight away after this gig because I feel threatened. So I never got out of the place as quick with all the equipment. That night. I was just I got out there as quick as I can. Like you said
Yeah,
earlier on about the ball, you can't remember exactly how you did it. You were like quick as anything to get out. You had the doors open, equipment all wrapped up and gone. It was
yeah,
the
yeah,
fight. Yeah,
yeah,
so
I suppose, yeah, yeah, yeah. And the thing about it is that yeah, there probably wasn't any real reason to be afraid as such, but just that your mind had started catastrophizing.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and so it made you feel that you had to run. But in fairness, you didn't get up and leave early and just go,
No,
okay, that's it, let's get out of here now, and
yeah.
leave people in the lurch. Because I suppose you can imagine a scenario where someone is, say, for example, supposed to do a presentation,
Mm,
and as they're waiting outside, or about to go in and go on stage or wherever it is, they hear people and they hear them laughing and they hear this, that, and the other going on, and they start
yeah,
thinking in their mind, "Oh God, uh, what are they like? Are they drunk, or are they going to be start heckling me, or what's the story? And by the time it's time to go on, your palms are all sweaty and stuff like that. And the next thing you go, okay, well, listen, that's it. I just can't go through with this. And you just run.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and then
exactly.
people are standing there waiting, going, where's this presentation,
Yeah, yeah.
And I think in
So
that situation, you can be, put off or whatever, so
you're overthinking the situation. It's about
that's exactly
overthinking
it.
what like predicting, predicting that's gonna go really badly when you can't like see yourself actually doing the event and being a success. You're looking at all the negatives because your anxiety has you that way. So that can
Yeah,
happen.
absolutely. Absolutely. And then, of course, then the third one then is freeze. And the problem is that obviously we've uh, talked about where freeze can be a good thing, can help save your life or whatever, that sort of thing. But also you have a situation where a lot of people freeze when they feel overwhelmed,
Yeah.
so they feel that they can't do this, they can't, they so instead of getting things done, they just freeze, they procrastinate, they put stuff off, and like that happens all the time.
Yeah.
They just don't give it a go. They don't even do the first thing because their mind's gone, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, over and over and over again, and then they just can't think. Again, the amygdala is taken over, so the prefrontal cortex can't calm them down. And like they say, when somebody's like anxious or they're upset or whatever, telling them to calm down is the worst thing you can possibly do,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
because at that point in time, talking to somebody on a logical level, when
Mm,
they're completely on an emotional level, just completely, it does not work at all. So the best thing to do is to try and distract the amygdala,
mm,
and to then try and give them a chance to let the prefrontal cortex kick in, and maybe do
mm.
a little bit of thinking about what's going on and how to maybe handle it, even if it is only one step at a time, one baby step at a time.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
suppose the thing about it is that what we're doing here is bringing, I suppose, to people's attention what anxiety is, how it
mm,
works in a positive way, and how it works in a negative way, right? But of
yeah,
course, there's probably nothing in there that people don't already know, especially if they
definitely.
have anxiety.
Yeah, yeah.
Can identify with all of those situations.
Mm,
So I suppose the main thing what we want to do here is to try and give people solutions, give
mm,
people things that they can do
yeah.
um, to help them in situations where they're feeling anxious.
And Fintan,
And
I just say there, the goal is
yeah,
not to be free of all anxiety in your life. The
yeah,
aim is to get rid of the debilitating anxiety, like anxiety in your life, like things that wreck it, like rather than stuff that make it positive. That's really the aim.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so the thing about it is, right, I mentioned there earlier that what happens is we already have patterns in our brain, right? And what
Mm,
happens is we create these from when we're babies. For
mm,
example, if you ever see a baby or a young child trying to pick up a cup, and they reach over to the cup and they lift it, but of course they knock it over or they push it aside because they just haven't quite got the coordination right. And what's happening is they're building neural pathways the whole time. So at the start they're practically, not quite, but practically a blank slate. And
mm,
so for them, they have to learn everything, and everything is frustrating because, of course, they don't know how to do it already. You know,
yeah,
and it's only as they start to learn to do things that they have a pattern already in a neural pathway for each thing. Now, the thing about it is that for anxiety, we have neural pathways built as well, a pattern that we have already put in place. It's a program that our amygdala runs every single time we feel anxious. And it follows the same pattern because it knows, well, this is what happened the last time, and I did this, and then the anxiety went away, right? Or the danger, sorry, went away. So it might be that I felt anxious over going into a particular place. And so I ran away. And then the danger went away. But of course, the problem is that that isn't a particularly useful pattern necessarily, unless, of course, the dangerous place was a place where people were going to kill you or something like that. But if it's a situation where it could be school, it could be work, it could be somewhere, as I said earlier, to make a presentation, things like that, then yeah, absolutely, it can be not a very useful pattern to you. And that's really what we want to deal with here. So the thing about it is that just because you have a pattern that you run to every time you feel anxious, if you can recognize that that is not a useful pattern for you, if it's a useful pattern, then that's great. Absolutely. You feel anxious, then maybe what we're going to do is teach you a few useful patterns, I suppose, that you can use to replace the patterns you have. So the first thing I'm going to do is, the first thing we're going to do is, I suppose, get you to start noticing when these things happen, when you start to feel anxious. And when you notice it, then before it can build up to too much, ask yourself, well, okay, what is it I'm feeling anxious about or whatever. But the other thing as well is, right, there's a thing called, of course, a pattern interrupt. So you start to feel anxious, you can probably feel it in your stomach, you can feel it in your chest, perhaps maybe you feel it tightening there. And what you can do is just put your hand up and go, where is it there? Camera, stop.
Yeah.
Just put your hand up and go, stop. Put your two hands up and go, stop, whatever you like. And then that will distract your amygdala and go, okay, hang on a second. You just interrupted the pattern. So instead of just running down that neural pathway that you've always run down, you can stop for a second. All right. And then what you can do is some of the things we're going to show you now in a second here. Employ one of those techniques instead. So what we're going to suggest to you to do, or what you are going to do after tonight, is you're going to create new neural pathways for yourself. All right. So we're going to show you 2 or 3 new neural pathways. And what you'll notice then is that when you find yourself going down the old neural pathway, or when you find yourself faced with the old neural pathway, and you do the pattern interrupt, imagine there's a big sign up in front of it saying stop, no entry. Okay, hammered up so you can no longer go down this, right? Now imagine a situation where you're looking at it, you're standing on a path and you're looking at a field and it's all tall grass. Okay, so there's one pathway and you can see that that's the pathway you normally go down, and it's well worn down, it's not overgrown. But when you put that sign over it, okay, what will happen is you stop using it, it'll overgrow. And when you start creating a new neural pathway, what will happen? You wear down the grass. So then you create, and it gets easier and easier every time you use it. Does that make sense, Mark?
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's really well
Yeah.
explained. Yeah, really well
Thanks
explained.
very much.
Yeah.
So the thing is that what we want you to do is to go stop and go down the new neural pathway, or pick one, or maybe more than one of the pathways. You're going to employ more than one of these things at any given time, right? So I suppose one thing you can do is, if even now, or when this is over, actually, even if you do it now, actually, it's a good idea. If you think about a time when you felt really anxious, okay, the most anxious you've ever felt, right? Imagine a scenario and that, right? And what you can do is just give it a number, right? So this is what's called a standard units of distress, or SUDS for short, right? So imagine if 0 is absolutely no anxiety whatsoever, you're totally zen, totally calm, and 10 is you're ready to just, I don't know, jump out the window or something, right? Okay, put a number on it, right? Whereabouts is it, right? So say, for example, you say, oh my God, I'm feeling very anxious. It's a 7 or an 8, okay? So the first thing I want to teach you is something that comes from Chinese medicine, all right? And it uses acupressure points, okay? Now, there's no acupuncture, there's no pointy needles involved, right? But what it does involve
I'd be happy
is,
to hear that.
tapping, tapping on those acupressure points. All right. So the first one is the crown of the head. Okay. So just tap on it 10 times. Okay. And what that does is that automatically starts to reduce anxiety straight away. The next is the center of the forehead, which some people will recognize as the third eye in chakra, and also the pineal gland. All right. The next is the side of the eye, making sure that you're tapping the bone at the corner of the eye. Okay. You can use both if you like, both hands. And under the eye. So you're looking at the cheekbone there. Okay. The next is the collarbone. So just in under the collarbone there. And the final is the wrist. Okay. So you can tap your wrists or you can slap the wrist. You can hold the wrist, whatever it is, just something to trigger that point. All right. And what you can do is ask yourself again, well, how anxious am I now? And you may feel that, well, if it was a 7 or 8, it may now be a 4 or a 5. All right. Now, one thing to watch out for in this is to make sure that you're hydrated. So do take a drink of water before you start doing this. And also, it may be if it's going down slowly. So if it was an 8 and now it's only a 7, then a 6, then maybe you want to try a different room in the house, for example. Apparently, there can be some sort of electronic interference if you happen to be in, and then you go to a different room, and that will disappear then, you know. And the beauty of this is that you can build this into your system. You can also build it into your daily routine. Now, I know it does look a bit weird doing this. So the thing about it is that what I discovered was, right, that by doing it, so I'll get you to do it again, all right? Okay. I want you to feel each area as you tap it and to recognize it. Okay. To recognize that feeling. And then to try and visualize it or feel it as if you were tapping without actually tapping. All right. So remember how it feels when your fingers are tapping the top of your head. And now remember how it feels when they're tapping your forehead. Okay. Remember how it feels when they're tapping the side of your eye. And remember how it feels when they're tapping under your eye. And now your collarbone. And now your wrists. Can you feel that, Mark?
I can, yeah. That's great because even though you're not doing it, you remember it as you done it a few minutes ago, and you can feel it. And
Absolutely.
as you feel it, you can actually feel the points of each one.
Exactly.
And
So what you can do
better.
then is you can be walking down the road, or you can be in a situation, you can be sitting in work, and you can just visualize or feel that tapping without actually having to do the tapping now. All right. Now, what you want to do is you want to do the tapping, continue doing the tapping until you get it down to 0. So anytime you're tapping, so this can be used not just for anxiety, but it can be used for physical pain. In fact, when I discovered it first, I was using it because I had a pain in my leg. I had, and it was quite painful, and I really needed to do something about it. And I started doing it for that reason. And a friend of mine said to me, "Oh, he loves walking, and he did a bit of walking." And I said, "I haven't seen you out walking in a while." He says, "Oh, yeah, I've this often pain in my foot." He says, "All right, okay. What's the story with it?" And he says, "Well, I don't know. Because I don't seem to know what's wrong with it." So I said, "Well, do you know what to do? Try this tapping." So I got him to do the tapping, and I said to him, "Oh," he said to me, "Do you know what? I'll do it in the morning, when I, And I says, "Well, no, Joe, do it before you go to bed. You'll have a great night's sleep." So anyway, the next day I was talking to him, and I said to him, "How'd you get on with that tapping?" And he says, "Oh, it's just brilliant." He says, "I did it for about 40 minutes." He said, "But you know what? I had the best night sleep I've had in years." I went, "Oh, that's great. Obviously, you worked for your foot. Did the pain go in your foot?" He says, "No, no." He said, "I got rid of all my anxiety."
Oh, that's great.
And that was the first time I realized that actually, that's what you can use it for that as well, So I have to say it's absolutely amazing. And the other thing, then, the last thing I'm going to say on this is um, that when you have done that and you have it zeroed, right, on your the back of your hand, right, there's a channel there between just below your little finger, okay. And what you can do is just tap that, okay. And what that does is it gives you very positive um, feelings. So, for example, if you're going to give a presentation, you say, "I am absolutely awesome at giving presentations." All right. This presentation is going to be amazing. People are going to love this presentation. All the information I have in it is great. The content is very useful. People are just going to love this and they're going to get great use out of it. And I'm just the most amazing presenter, and or whatever the case might be. Or if you're going for an interview, I am the most amazing person going for this job, and you will feel absolutely awesome. And then at the end, I'm going to get you to anchor it. So if you get your thumb and your ring finger and press them together and just go, awesome. And feel that go into your body now.
Great stuff.
That's right. Now,
A question there for you, Fintan, just while you're
yeah,
doing that was a brilliant demonstration there, and like great for everybody.
cheers.
And can I ask you, you know the way you're doing this part at the end?
Yeah,
Just I wonder, you know the way you can actually imagine you're feeling yourself tapping. Can you
yeah,
imagine? I wonder, can you imagine you're doing that as well
you
instead of
can.
doing it?
Absolutely, because I do
Yeah, yeah, great.
every
Because I
day.
know, because very good. Yeah, you can actually, because as you say, if you're on a bus doing that, people look at you funny sometimes,
Oh
or
yeah,
yeah,
but all you have to do
yeah.
when you press your thumb and your ring finger together, right?
Hmm.
What you're doing there is you're anchoring that feeling,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And what you can do is you can add onto that. So, for example, if you're feeling absolutely amazing, say you're watching a really funny movie or something like that, or a comedian or something like that, and you're just laughing your head off, very positive state, you can tap your thumb and your ring finger together. And what you're doing is you're anchoring it. So what that means is you're um, anchoring the feeling in your body so
yeah.
that you can retrieve it. So it's like having a button, pressing a button, an awesome button. So when you
Yeah.
do that, press that again, you can bring that feeling up again. And what you can do is you can make that stronger and stronger and stronger as you go. So every time you do your tapping and you anchor it, or you do your laughing and you anchor it, whatever it might happen to be, you're putting awesome, awesome feelings into that finger. And when you tap on it or touch it with your thumb, what happens? You end up recalling those awesome feelings.
It brings it all back, yeah. And then one thing to mention as well, that was great, Fintan, you know the way you're saying, when you tap something out, it's
Yeah,
good to kind of put a name to the actual feeling you're having as well.
yeah,
Like just say you're getting it down to zero and then something else might pop up that you're
yeah,
feeling anxious about. Just zero each one down
yes,
till you get to zero. Because just say you've zeroed something, you're saying, "Oh yeah, that feels good," but something else is after cropping up. So name that thing again, name that problem again, and that will bring it down.
absolutely, yeah. And to be honest with you, I found it first when I was using it, as I said, for the pain in my leg. Because what was happening was uh, I was getting a pain in my leg and or stiffness in my leg, and what was happening was then my my leg was protecting a particular area, right? And
Yeah.
then what it would do is it would obviously put an overload on another part of my leg, which then
Mm,
would have to be protected. So it was like an onion, peeling the
yeah.
layer off an onion. So if you've had anxiety for years, right, this isn't going to happen in just one go, right?
Hmm.
What's going to happen is um, you're going to, as you mentioned there, and I'm glad you mentioned that, to be honest with you, you're going to unwrap one layer, and then what's going to happen is you're going to unwrap the next layer. So each bit of anxiety is probably hiding another piece of anxiety underneath it, and then it's hiding another piece, and it's hiding another piece. So yeah, look, the thing about it is that every time you unwrap a layer, you get it down to zero. That's great. And yes, there may well be something else will come up. And if there is, bring that down to zero. But what you'll find is there's less and less and less over time things to cause anxiety and things that you need to unwrap until eventually you get down to zero in everything. And then you will actually find quite quickly, with consistent practice, that you can create new neural pathways, stop the old neural pathways, and in fact, just completely interrupt those patterns and find yourself a completely different person with a different life, you know?
Brilliant. That's great. That's really, really helpful. Yeah, and as well as that, we're kind of talk around it's something that came in from Japanese medicine as well, like 7-11 breathing. You can
Mm-hmm.
kind of mix and match a lot of these techniques together. And like basically what that is, breathing can really change anything, can change your state, the way you breathe. So what I mean by that is, just say you're feeling anxious or whatever it is, you can just like you can stop, like Fintan explained earlier on, and you can breathe in through your nose for 7. So if you want to try this now, so breathe in through your nose for 7 and out through your mouth for 11. Breathing slowly. You can even push your lips together to make it go slower. So again, we're gonna breathe in for 7 and breathe out through the mouth for 11. And if you find it easier, you can push your lips together when you're breathing out. So we're gonna do it again. So breathe in for 7. So as you do that, you can use the swords as well. Like before you actually do the tapping, you can look at the standard units of the stress, how bad, even if you're not feeling anxious, but how bad you can make it feel at the time, and then start the breathing, the 7-11 breathing we call it, and that can, you'll notice yourself calming down and feeling at ease. And there's another great thing you can do with that as well that we discovered to help with anxiety. Okay, so you've got your finger and your thumb. You're using these two, your finger and your thumb. So what you do, you can do this while you're doing the 7-11 breathing. You can hold your thumb like that and just feel it pulsating on the right hand. And when you've done your swords, you can feel, as well as doing your 7-11 breathing, this will tend to bring the anxiety down and make you feel really calm. So if you want to do that, squeeze your thumb and breathe in for 7 and out for 11. Breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. So here we go. So that basically, you can do that when you don't feel, you can kind of feel the anxiety coming on, and you can do that to feel less anxious. What I've heard people doing when they're on, if they're on an airplane and they don't feel, they feel nervous of flying, that can really help, without doing anything else, doing hypnosis or anything like that. Just by doing that, that can relieve the stress of the flying. It can really help. And basically, another, for using the finger as well, the index finger of either hand, whether if you're left-handed or right-handed, you can squeeze that finger, and again do the 7-11 breathing. And if this is when you're actually in anxiety, if you're not actually going towards it, but it's actually happening at the time, so you can squeeze that index finger as well as taking the breathing in for 7 in through the nose and out for 11 with breathing out through the mouth. So we'll try that. You can feel it pulsating. So breathing in through the nose. Again. and I can feel myself just getting feeling really relaxed now. Do you feel that as well, Fintan?
Absolutely, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Like
it's great.
between, yeah, tapping, breathing,
Yeah.
Japanese.
We'll sleep
Yeah,
great tonight. And then what you can do as well is just even put your finger and your thumb together, and you can
yeah,
just squeeze the two of them together, and you can feel that pulsating, and just do the breathing again, and that will ensure you're really really relaxed now, and it will should take you'll use the sword so you can feel it going down to zero, like Finton explained very well earlier on with the tapping. But what you feel is the anxiety just totally leaving your system. So we'll breathe. We'll do this again while we hold these two in. So 1, 2, 3, 7 in through the nose and 11 out through the mouth. Go. Yeah. So what I've used this for over the last couple of nights is if you find it hard going to sleep, you can actually hold the thumb and let it pulsate for 10 or 15 minutes, and you'll find you drift off really quickly. And again, if you wake up in the middle of the night, you can do the same thing, and you'll find it's really helped me for sleeping. It's a great mechanism for any forms of anxiety. So again, just to reiterate, the 7-11 breathing while doing these exercises are awesome, really really good.
excellent. That's great. Thanks very much, Mark.
Thank you, Finton. Great stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. Right.
Yeah, so have we anything else to add before we go on to our scale on lay and our cast on lay for this evening?
No, that's it really. I think that's enough for now anyway. There are
Yeah,
more things that we can do. I think we
mm,
probably will cover that in a future episode.
yeah,
But I think there's lots there for everyone to be getting on with now for the moment.
mm,
To be honest with you, if you can do all of those things and practice all of those things, um, you'll start to feel an immediate effect,
yeah, definitely.
relaxation, when any anxiety comes on. And you'll notice that less and less are you inclined to follow the pattern down that old pathway and instead start going down the new pathways instead.
Mm. And we would absolutely love the feedback from this podcast as well. Just if you give me, just even share it by email or on our Facebook page, just to let us know how you found these techniques have helped you.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'd love to get some feedback. And of course, if anybody is interested in working with us, either NLP Upskill Your Life at hotmail.com or DM us on Instagram um, or Facebook, as Mark said there. Absolutely. And as I say, we hope that you get some use out of this. As I said, there are many more techniques out there to for one night. I
Yeah.
think that's there's an awful lot of good stuff in that.
Yeah, no, it's been great. And again, like what Finton says, like, just it's all about just practicing this. Anytime you feel any way stressed or anxious, you'll really reap the benefits of these techniques.
Absolutely. So, Mark, do you have a question lay for us? Question of the day.
Yeah, I suppose like so the one off the top of my head. um okay, so which one of these techniques are you gonna do today that is gonna make your life even more awesome than it is now? So again, which one of these techniques that me and Finton showed you tonight are you gonna try and succeed at to make your life super awesome? So do we have a scale on, like?
Excellent, Mark. Thanks very much. I do indeed. Yeah. So, a long time ago in ancient China, there was a farmer, and he had a lovely stallion, and everybody in the area knew that he had this stallion, and they all loved the stallion. It was the best stallion for miles around. Anyway, one night he ran off, and the next door neighbor, the farmer next door to him, came round and said, "Oh, I heard your stallion ran off." He said, "That's a terrible thing." And the farmer said, "I don't know. Wait and see." So the next day, the stallion came back and he brought two wild horses with him, two amazingly beautiful horses. And the farmer next door came round to him and said, "Oh, isn't that an amazing luck? Isn't that great luck? Not only have you got your stallion back, but you've got two wild horses as well." So he said, "I don't know. We'll see." So anyway, the next day, his son was out training, breaking in one of these wild horses, and he fell off. He got thrown off the horse and broke his leg. And then the farmer next door came up to him and said, "Oh, isn't that terrible?" He said, "I heard your son got thrown off this wild horse and broke his leg." And he said, the farmer said, "I don't know. We'll see." So the next day, the army came recruiting, conscripting all the healthy young men around the area. But they didn't take his son because his son had a broken leg. And the farmer came up and said, "Oh, wasn't that very lucky that your son had the broken leg, that he didn't get conscripted?" And the other farmer said, "I don't know. We'll see."
Brilliant. I love that one. That's great. Thanks very much, Brenton.
No problem at all.
So once again, really appreciate all the listeners for and watching people watching on YouTube to NLP Upskill Your Life. And so if you want to get in touch with us at any stage, if you want to discuss anything in the podcast, you know where to do. Email nlpupskilllife@hotmail.com.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mark. And
Thanks,
thanks very
Brenton.
much to everybody listening and watching.
Yeah.
And we hope
So
you get some use out of this.
so join us again for another podcast, another fortnight. Till then, take good care of yourselves and good night.
Good night.